Hello, I think I'm finally live now. One second while I figure all of this out. Okay, I think I'm actually live. Wonderful. So this is my first time being live on Facebook, and I logged in right at 7, went live, saw myself on camera, so I just started talking, and I was talking for about 10 minutes before someone told me that I'm not live. So, wonderful. Everything seems to be all set now. So let me start over. So my name is Karolina Zapal. Thank you for joining me on this lovely Sunday evening. I'll be reading today from my book, Notes from Mid-Birth. There it is, Notes from Mid-Birth. It came out with Inside the Castle last December, and it's actually incredible that my reading is this November because a lot of what's in the book is very pertinent now. I don't know if, let me see, where should I start? Let me actually start with what inspired me to write the book. So back in 2016, which is when I started writing this book, there were protests in Poland. So I'm Polish, and I immigrated from there. I'm still very much connected to the country. I go back whenever I can. I have family there. It's very much like a country I spend a lot of time thinking about. And so in 2016, there were protests called the Black Protests, and they were because of the far right-wing government was trying to impose even more stringent abortion laws. So abortion is illegal in Poland, but the right-wing government, which is actually still in power, is trying to impose even crazier abortion laws, basically. And so there were protests, and I actually didn't know at the time that this was happening. I found out from a friend, and I started looking up these news stories, and I found myself in my bed just crying. I was just bawling, like reading these news stories and seeing these images of women who looked a lot like me just at these protests, and I felt so guilty for not being able to be there and for being in the United States and having the right to abortion. All these feelings just mixed up for me, and so I started the book, and I've been working on it for a few years. The protests happened again in 2018, and they're actually happening now in 2020 because the government is again trying to pass this more stringent law. And every time they backtrack because of the protests that happen. So that's a little bit of background. To give a little bit more background, I thought I would read just from this timeline piece of my book, which just gives a little bit more context to the whole thing. So, October 3rd, 2016. The Black Protest, otherwise known as Black Monday. Tens of thousands of men and women boycott work and school to protest the Stop Abortion bill. Streets and cities across Poland, including Warsaw, Kraków, and Wrocław, fill with black. Clothing, umbrellas, signs, and smoke. Surprised by the unprecedented size of the crowd and echo protests in Brussels, Berlin, and London, lawmakers backtrack. Parliament rejects the bill. As a Polish immigrant in America, I find out about the protest last minute from a friend and chastise my ignorance. I see Polish American friends showing their support on social media, but I stir in silence. A post from me right now would feel inauthentic. At the time, I'm working as a canvasser for the 2016 presidential election. Although affiliated with Hillary's campaign, my job is not necessarily to convince people to vote a certain way, but to convince them to vote, to show up at the polls, to mail in their ballots, to not abstain, thinking their votes won't matter. As I knock on strangers' doors by myself at night, I am preoccupied with American politics and my femaleness, the organization failing to offer any measures to make me feel comfortable and safe. I do things like interrupt band practice for a group of dudes who only laugh at my optimism and delight in theirs. Attempt to speak to a woman whose bumper sticker, lawn post, and fridge magnet already suggest she won't be interested in speaking with me. Furiously write an essay about the job titled Kiss or Kill the President. I met with a lot of aggression, both for questioning hard political ideologies and interrupting protected home lives. Only one person offers me water, says thank you. Guilt continues to sidle past my defenses. Why did I not learn about the black protest weeks in advance and hop on a plane? Why am I not there protesting with them, adorned in black garb? Then, upon reading news stories, guilt turns to sadness. Seeing women who look like me fight for the keys to their own bodies makes me cry. The whole thing feels like a ride through woods riddled with low-hanging branches that smother my vision. When it seems like they'll let up, another one smacks me in the face. So that's a little bit of background about what inspired me to read this, to write this book. And now I'll launch into my actual reading. And again, thank you for joining me tonight. So I'm going to read from a section of the book titled Czerń, which means the color black in Polish. All Polish colors are entities, adjectives but also nouns. Their job, like a human has a job, is to describe objects. Czarny chair, czarny tail, but they themselves are entities, czerń. English is deficient in colors with a soul. They become redness, pinkness, or yellowness, which no one ever says. Why did English makers stop at ness? They weren't able to imagine anything better to name the noun, not even an amputated version of the adjective, like pin for pink or yell for yellow. In Polish, różowy, pink, an adjective and a noun, also becomes róż, pinkness, a noun. That's why in Poland the black protest is less a protest where people wear black and more an entity, blackness, that wafts into the tenant. If 10 women wear a black dress, they're equally important. If 10 women wear a red dress, they blend in. You learn this on The Bachelor. To try to understand, you listen to the heart of a television and that of a vagina, red and porch-like. When the screen is black, the news is the same. Viewers consider it of equal importance. If vaginas, however, looked and felt the same? What if women had the ability to choose their vaginas based on what felt good and impress sexual partners? They don't like wearing the same dress, so imagine the horror if they chose the same vagina. Except how they use those same vaginas, those instruments, would still differ wildly. Let's try a different analogy. Gloomy weather, something flying over something else, shadows sneaking in before true nightfall. Your grandfather paces to the end of the driveway and back again, on the lookout for thievery by the sky. He's more afraid of storms that come from the west, hills there, and then suddenly a red streak of light or something else red, unexpected, like blood and stool, shrieks in front of his vision. Shock, a call to the police, a doctor maybe. There isn't supposed to be red in a storm, or for that matter, a mushroom. Black already blends in. Red is meant to stand out. Too much red blends in. A lot of black stands out. Colors are not transitive verbs, used with object. Perhaps then black doesn't need ness to have a soul, and the prerequisite for soul is to not come before an object. Blue is like black in that there's strength in quantity. You write in an entirely blue room in a medical school, and you're not kidding about the floor and the chairs and the cubicles and the walls and the light waffles. You cannot open your kettle because it's too not blue. You because you're not conforming blue. Roller coaster blue, the color a container for stress. Not many things are naturally blue except, of course, the sky, the water, the hottest part of fire. As a result, English makers, when they got to the blueberry, decided to highlight blue, even though the blueberry is only truly blue when you squint at a freshly picked basket in energetic sunlight. In Polish, blueberry is jagoda or borówka, a regional difference, neither of which index the color blue. By this logic, the black protests emphasize the scarcity of the color black in politics. Not enough anarchism. Conceivably, the protesters wear black for silence, because silence creates new surfaces for reconditioning. And you are the one brainstorming hypotheses about the map of creation, as if the black were an abstract memorial constructed by a sly architect. Or they wear black for bold, like a mole springing up somewhere unwanted in one of the body's many meadows. The mole is bold, goes where many tattoos do not dare go. It directs many gazes to it, gazes that revere its bravery but work to move it slightly off-center to better fit the eye. As with vaginas, there is a dressing room for this too. People try the protesters on, and they try them off. Does squinting at a single blade of grass on a table illuminate more about grass than watching it grow outside? Your grandmother asks you to cut the grass before you leave the country, but you forget. This illuminates more about guilt, which you'll get to later. Black, the idea of it, has to first form in someone's mind, one person's, unless two people think of it simultaneously. Chimneys, ones that stare at each other, must think alike in black. Hey, what about black? No, too city. We don't want to scare the villagers. Even people who come up with colors for a protest must face rejection, you think. Less than chimneys, though. No one likes a chimney, but there's no need to be scared. Everyone knows just as little as you do how air travels without a passport. And some animals aren't all that intuitive. Take, for example, a cat that will not pass through a hole when the flap is down, even if you drive its head through it to show it the way. No entrance, blacked out, end of story. Google helps to piece together symbols. Death makes mourning, makes rebirth, makes sophistication possible. And a dark silt, fertility. You like how it sounds, cavernous and deep. Can death be fertile? A friend picks up a pamphlet at a religiously affiliated bookstore. It says, "Did Jesus really die?" And someone writes a good rhyming poem about a boring mass. Does sexuality lead to fertility? Evolutionarily, the more sexual a woman is, the more chances she has to get pregnant. So wouldn't we admire high doses of sexuality? You learn a lot on The Bachelor. But having a chance at showing off one's fertility doesn't match actually being fertile. Just like having a chance at showing off one's dance moves doesn't necessarily prove one's talent for dance. Next. Black packaging is for sleek packaging. Black clouds are for bad clouds. Asphalt absorbs radiation and emits it as heat due to a low albedo. While it may sound like libido, the Latin root is albus, as albumin, the white of an egg. So you agree with the first part. When women are made to absorb too much toxicity, they emit fire. But it's not because of a low albedo. You stumble upon a blog titled The Barren Years. Its author talks about getting to the point in her infertility where she has started to speculate whether the color of her underwear affects her chances to conceive. The comments on the post chronicle many experiments with colored undergarments. Someone asks if plaid works. Black doesn't make the cut. If it were up to you, the most fertile color would be blackberry. Such a supple color, grasping sunshine in fists. Grows into late summer when the world releases an egg and welcomes you to vacation in its heightened basal body temperature. When lightning strikes, because what first comes to mind is something phallic, the blackberries sing a tune. Even the young ones that look like brains wish the rain luck. A few months later, a natural spring of blood drips, drips. You wish your period came in snow. Pre-morning, a sting swimming between your ribs. You can bait it with a single thought, a thought that acts, that laments the passing of time. You have been pre-mourning your grandparents ever since your mother nonchalantly asked whether you wanted to see their reserved graves, as if what they reserved were seats for a flight across the Atlantic. Did they choose the window plot with a view, or the aisle for accessibility? Definitely not the middle. Middle one only during sleepovers when you were little, as it guaranteed safety from supposed intruders. At the time, you reviled the morbid question, but recently went looking for the plots yourself. Maybe seeing them in person would plant them in the past, even temporarily, or rather lurch them far into the future. You did this on the off chance the surreal couldn't be real. In the end, they stayed put. You go to Europe for a year to be closer to them. Your unemotional cousin who lives in Germany, a more conveniently traversed distance away but is on a stint in California, texts you when you're with them. How are they? She asks. But how's their health? Your mother staggers for the phone whenever she dreams about them, assuming her dreams are winning lottery numbers clicking into place. You leave not knowing what the reasons will be behind your next arrival. The protesters pre-mourn. You have not yet taken to wearing black because, unlike the protesters, you pre-mourn specific people. A uniform color would target them. This reason, yes, fits like a glove, all the while missing the hand. So that is the Czarny section of my book, Notes from Mid-Birth. And here is the cover again. And one little piece of this book that I really love, and I'm not going to read from because it's long and it can be a little hard to understand when you're hearing someone read it. But I actually posted on Polish Reddit, asking about people's experiences at the Black protests, since I couldn't be there. And I got so many interesting responses, and actually I put a lot of them in this section of the book called Speak Out, where I kind of just let the digital room speak for itself. And a lot of people wrote about their own experiences in Poland. and how they're scared to get pregnant in Poland and to have a child there. It's all very, very interesting. And I guess I didn't explain this too much at the beginning, but basically what the government is trying to do, so abortion is already illegal, but they're trying to make it illegal even in cases where the fetus has a malformation or won't survive past birth. And so that is why the protests are currently happening. So please write some questions in the chat, in the comments, if you have any. And while I wait for questions, I'm actually going to read one very recent poem. I wrote this just a few days ago, and it's I'm working on this new collaborative book with a friend who's a visual artist, and we're both writing about our mothers who we live far away from, and I'm writing some poems, she's making some pieces, and then we're going to switch. And I'm very excited about this, but it's a difficult project for me because my mom does not like when I write about her, so every time I sit down to write a poem, I kind of have to balance what she wants with what I want as a writer. It's very difficult. But this is a recent poem from that collaborative project. She said, "Write about your mother's aversion to the color blue." He and I scrolled through a list of his most recently looked up words as we waited to be seated for brunch. Among plum and catgut, I came close to an answer. The blue around us was so ordinary, I thought I'd tie it in my hair. I used to push a red stroller up and down 3 flights of stairs, up and around vegetable-laced hills. I hated the color red, but despite the stroller, I decided to love. Was it because I had to hate a color that I saw buffaloes walk into the poppy sun, like linked paper clips a magnet dragged close to its skin? I gift-wrapped my blindness and sent it away. I still hate grocery shopping without a plan. It's like trying to find which one rose petal has wilted. Christmas is different this year, with zebra-striped penguins when I come home. When I had no car, I walked miles to an interview, ripping my tights. I hid in the parking lot and undressed, one-legged, then stood at the door waiting for someone to greet me until I was late. I called my mother to tell her there had been a mistake. She was to tell me whose. A first aid kit is full of marketing. Exam gloves are themselves blue but never touch anything of the same color. Stale cereal and coffee with too much cream are blue. Blue is primary. My mother needed colors to fight to reach her on the surface, like a school of fish fighting for the same sodden crumb. An American passport, democracy. A TSA agent flooded with blue took my mother's hand. Blue luggage stroked her hair. Wearing a face full of makeup like everyday boots wasn't enough to wipe away an accent. My mother interviewed with this country for a spot at the table, which is actually a parking lot. She rode the train into the city on a yellow dinner plate. Chicago's skyline sung to her in L's. I lived in a romanticized Poland. No more communism, a country in which food abounded. Blue is the only color of the American flag she denies. So that is a very recent poem that I wrote, and I'm still maybe working on it, but it's great to share it with you all. So I see one question. Can you tell us about your editing process? I can. It's it's all over the place, depending on what project I'm working on. For Notes for Mid-Birth, I actually started with just like basically one long poem, and it didn't feel like enough. So before I started editing, I kind of went from one long poem to a book length poem, if you can say that. And then afterwards, I actually ended up cutting a lot from the book because I am an overwriter and I write way too much all the time. So I actually cut a lot of sections that I felt didn't exactly need to be there for a cohesive story. In terms of like more local edits, I just reread things so many times, and I probably edit my work more than I should. It's very hard for me to leave a piece alone, and even with, I have 2 books published at this point, and even with both of these books, sometimes I open up to a page and I'm just like, oh, like why do I have this comma here? So it's still a struggle to accept writing that's even already in print. But I try to just believe that that's my process, and that was where I was when I wrote it, and so I try to honor that. But it is difficult. So, what are you currently reading? I read a lot of contemporary poetry. I'm currently reading a few books in translation, actually. I've been on this like Slavic writers in translation kick. One of my favorite writers in general is Olga Tokarczuk, who won the Nobel last year, and she is such an amazing novelist. So going off the contemporary poetry track, but such an amazing novelist. If you haven't read any of her books, please do. They are so good. How do you keep yourself safe and well while writing about such charged topics? That's a very great question. I think one thing is community. I wrote actually a lot of notes for mid-birth while I was doing artist residencies in Europe, and the section that I read from Chen, actually that entire section was written at Greywood Arts in Ireland, which is this amazing little residency in just outside of Cork in a little village. They're so awesome, like please look them up. And so I think being there while I wrote this, and actually I was there writing this like just a few months after Ireland legalized abortion, so it was so weird and different, and I didn't know whether I could read stuff about, I did a reading while I was there, and I asked the host if it was okay for me to read this, because I felt like the room was just full of these Irish writers who I didn't know. Gosh, it's always hard to read a room, especially when such a law gets passed. But she basically, her answer, and I remember it to this day, there was, right next to us, there was a crocheted uterus, and she's like, you're in the vicinity of a crocheted uterus, I think you'll be fine. So I just kind of try to think about that whenever I struggle with knowing who my audience is, or with writing about charged topics. I reach for community and for friends. And I also stop writing. If I need to, I take a break and I come back to it. I started this book in 2016 and it didn't get done till 2019. So yeah, a few years. It took me a few years. Who are your Polish inspirations these days? So I love Olga Tokarczuk, as I said. I also love a few Polish poets who are completely leaving my head right now, and I wish I had the books next to me. But I'm pretty sure one of them is Tadeusz Dąbrowicz. Really great writer, Polish writer. There's another one that I read recently. Oh, and one of my absolute favorite books is called Lost in Translation by Eva Hoffman. And I actually read this book while I was working on this book last year on the finishing edits. And it is an amazing book about someone who migrated from Poland and grew up in Canada, just about identity and language. I would definitely recommend that book. Do you dream in color? Do you write about your dreams? I do dream in color. Do people not dream in color? That's interesting. And I write about my dreams, yes, and a few dreams. Wow, I have a mosquito just landed on my desk. I thought it was too cold for mosquitoes. I do write about my dreams. They often make it into my work. They did in this book. So one of the ending scenes of this book, speaking about dreams, is about this dream that I had, and it was right after Trump was elected in 2016. I had a dream where basically I was being like tortured by this man inside a house, and someone came and like stopped him, and then but like he ran away, and he got away, and he started driving this like tiny car down this hill, and I went outside and I threw a purple dildo down this road, and as it rolled down the road, the dildo just kept getting bigger and bigger and ended up like off-roading my attacker. So very interesting, vivid dream. It made it into this book. In case you would like to read about a giant purple dildo. Again, don't know who my audience is right now, but I'm gonna assume that I'm in the presence of a crocheted uterus. Have you started on a third book? I have probably like 11 books going. Actually, recently in the summer, I came to this realization that I can't keep doing what I'm doing because it's unsustainable with just starting projects and then not finishing them, and basically thinking, oh, this will be my next project, because at one point I had 11. And so I decided to consolidate a bunch of them, which has like lifted a huge weight off my shoulders. And right now I'm actually working on, besides this collaborative book that I'm working on with a friend, I am also working on just putting a collection of poems together. It would be my first collection of just poems. So far I've only written like book length hybrid poetry and nonfiction books, which is the form that felt the most important to me when I was writing about my immigration and about abortion rights in Poland. So, okay, I think that is all of the questions that I see. Thank you so much again for being here and for listening to me speak and to read. The book, Notes from Mid-Birth, is available on Inside the Castle Press. They're a lovely little press. And my first book, Polalka, which is about my immigration from Poland, is available on Spuyten Duyvil. And that's it. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.